The village of Umueke lay quietly beneath the soft, golden haze of dawn. Red dust clung to every path, every clay hut, and every bare foot that dared step outside. Chickens pecked at the dirt, women swept compounds with palm fronds, and the distant sound of goats bleating mixed with the murmur of the river beyond the hill. In a small, crooked hut at the edge of the village, Favour, a girl of 12, stirred awake. Her thin blanket, patched with remnants of faded cloth, hardly shielded her from the cold. Her stomach had been empty for 2 mornings now, and the ache within reminded her that the last morsel had been a small piece of yams, shared with a younger boy who clung to her arm as if she were all the world had. Favour had no parents. No one in Umueke remembered her mother clearly. She had fallen sick when Favour was just a baby, and her father had disappeared into the forest one rainy night, never to return. The villagers spoke little of them now, and Favour had learned early that sorrow was hers to carry alone. But sorrow had not made her weak. Favour had learned to survive. She knew which goats were stray and which belonged to neighbors, which fruits were safe to eat, and how to beg for work with a humble bow of the head. And yet, some nights, when the wind whistled through the cracks of her hut, she would whisper into the dark, "I wish someone would see me. I wish someone would care." The rainy season had arrived early that year. Dark clouds rolled over the hills, and the red earth of Umueke turned to sticky mud that swallowed bare feet. Favour trudged through it, carrying a basket she had found abandoned near the market. She hoped to trade its contents for rice, a few yams, or even a scrap of fish. She passed by Mama Chica, the village healer, who eyed her with thinly veiled pity. "Favour," she called softly, "you should not go out in this rain. You'll catch your death." Favour shook her head. "I must, Mama Chica. I haven't eaten since yesterday." Mama Chica sighed, her hands wringing together. She could give her nothing but words. Favour lowered her eyes and moved on. Hunger had sharpened her patience, and every day was a calculation of risks and rewards. Mud or hunger, wet or weak, cold or starved. By evening, her basket was nearly empty, and the river had swelled, flooding part of the path home. Favour sat on a clump of grass, her legs caked in red mud, and her teeth chattered. She had no mother to wrap her in warmth, no father to curse the rain. Only the small boy, Chinedu, who slept beside her on a mat of old leaves, murmured, "Favour, are we safe?" She hugged him close, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to cry. The tears mixed with rain on her dirt-streaked face, and she whispered to the sky, "If anyone is listening, help us." It was on the 3rd day of the rain that Favour met Obinna, a young trader passing through Umueke. He had come from the city with a cart of fabrics, spices, and coins that jingled in a small bag at his side. He noticed Favour crouched beside the swollen river, shivering, her face streaked with tears and mud. "Child," he called, his voice careful, "are you all right?" Favour shook her head but did not rise. She had learned long ago that strangers often meant trouble, or at best, empty words. Obinna knelt beside her, pulling a small, folded blanket from his bag. "Here," he said. "Cover yourself. You shouldn't be out in this rain alone." For a moment, Favour stared, unsure if kindness could exist. Then, trembling, she accepted the blanket, wrapping herself and Chinedu in it. The warmth was foreign, almost frightening, but it sparked a flicker of hope she had thought buried forever. Obinna's eyes softened. "Why are you out here alone?" he asked gently. Favour bit her lip and whispered, "No one cares." Word of the encounter spread quickly. In a village like Umueke, everyone knew everyone else's business, and gossip traveled faster than the river in flood season. Some villagers frowned upon Obinna for helping Favour. "She's an orphan. Why bother?" they said. Others, like Mama Chica, nodded approvingly. But Favour noticed something shifting. Children who had once ignored her offered her scraps of food. A woman selling yams called her over and gave her a small portion free. Even the boys who had once pushed her off the path stepped aside. Still, gratitude came with its own pain. Each act of kindness reminded Favour of what she had lost. Nights were the hardest. When she lay beside Chinedu on the leaf mat, she felt the cold press against her thin skin, and she remembered the lullabies her mother once sang. fading like smoke in the wind. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the dark. "I wish I were different. I wish I had a home." Days passed, and the rains did not relent. Favour's thin blanket, once a gift of comfort, grew damp and heavy. The village paths were rivers of red mud, and Chinedu's small legs grew weaker with each day. Favour searched every corner of Umueke for food, leftover yams, fallen fruits, even scraps of cassava from abandoned kitchens, but the village had little to spare. The traders were leaving, the river had swallowed some farmlands, and hunger gnawed relentlessly. One evening she returned to their hut empty-handed, and Chinedu's stomach rumbled loudly. Favour's own stomach ached in sympathy. She sank beside him, pressed her thin hands over his small frame, and whispered, "I'm sorry, little one. I'm so sorry." Tears fell freely now, leaving streaks through the mud on her face. She realized then that being brave did not make you invincible. Hunger was a shadow no courage could banish. It was Mama Chica again who saved them. Seeing Favour and Chinedu shivering in the corner of the village, she beckoned them into her hut. "You need warmth and you need food," she said firmly. "Come in." Inside, a small fire crackled in a clay hearth. The smoke was sharp in Favour's eyes, but the heat melted some of the ice in her chest. Mama Chica handed them a small bowl of porridge, thick and steaming. Chinedu clutched it to his chest, eyes wide in disbelief. Favour tasted it slowly, savoring every grain, and felt tears prick her eyes again, not from hunger, but from relief. "You mustn't face this alone," Mama Chica said gently. "Even in a village like Umueke, some of us care." For the first time in a long while, Favour considered the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she did not have to carry the world entirely on her small shoulders. But life rarely offers relief without cost. As the days grew wetter, whispers of suspicion spread through Umueke. Some villagers accused Favour of exaggerating her plight to gain charity. Others grumbled at Mama Chica for spoiling the orphan. Favour felt their eyes, sharp as knives, wherever she went. She wanted to shrink into the earth, hide beneath its red soil, and disappear. One afternoon, while collecting firewood at the edge of the forest, a boy from the village ambushed her. "Stop pretending you're so poor," he shouted. "You're lying to get gifts." Favour froze, Chinedu pressed close to her side, and her heart hammered with shame and fear. The boy pushed her, and she fell into the mud. She didn't fight back, she could not. Her small frame was too frail, her voice too quiet. Yet, as she sat there, face streaked with tears and dirt, she felt a spark of something else, defiance. She would survive, not for the villagers, not for their judgments, but for herself, and for Chinedu. Winter approached, and the sun pierced the clouds with soft golden streaks. One morning, Obinna returned to Umueke. He had traveled back from the city with a few coins and a basket of supplies. Rice, yams, dried fish, and a small tin of soap. He found Favour tending a small patch of mud garden behind Mama Chica's hut. The plants were weak, but the effort filled her with pride. "Favour," he said, kneeling beside her, "I brought these for you and Chinedu. You won't have to sleep hungry tonight." For a moment, Favour stared, unsure if it was real. Then, slowly, she allowed a small smile to spread across her face. "Thank you," she whispered. Obinna nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. He had met many orphans, but Favour, small, wary, stubborn, was different. She did not beg for pity. She only survived. Life did not suddenly become easy. Favour still worked for scraps, still faced whispers, still felt the sting of hunger. But the small acts of kindness, the bowl of porridge, the blanket, Obinna's gifts, reminded her that even in sorrow, threads of hope could weave a small safety net. She began teaching Chinedu the little she knew, which fruits were safe to eat, how to carry water without spilling, and how to move quietly when the rain turned paths to rivers. She laughed softly when he tripped or spilled water, and sometimes the sound startled her. It had been too long since she had laughed freely. The villagers still judged her, but Favour learned to ignore their eyes. She had learned, slowly, that survival was not only about enduring hunger and cold. It was about holding on to small joys, to the people who truly cared, and to the faint glimmers of possibility that the world occasionally offered. By the time she turned 13, Favour had grown stronger, not just in body, but in spirit. She carried Chinedu on her back when the river swelled, shared her small meals with neighbors in need, and greeted the dawn with a quiet resilience. The village still whispered. They always would. But Favour no longer craved their approval. She had learned that the red earth of Umueke could be harsh, but it also taught courage, patience, and love, even when no one seemed to care. Favour looked at Chinedu one evening as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky gold and crimson. "We'll be okay," she said softly. "No matter what, we'll be okay." And for the first time in years, she believed it.